And we're live. Welcome to this special edition of Beers, Cheers, and Happenings. 8 years with Beards anniversary.
Yes. 8 years open.
Big milestone in a unique year. So hopefully here a few folks will be joining us, and we're going to just go ahead and crack a beer to get things started off. This is extra special. It's actually cutting a little bit out with the green screen. Sometimes yellows do that. D's Nuts barrel aged. When did we do this?
Ooh, that was...
We didn't put a year on.
No, we didn't put a year on that. We did one run of it, and it's been sitting in my fridge aging because I've been waiting for an occasion for it. Because it's one of those things where I don't want to drink it because I know that there's a very limited supply, and
I'll let you do it.
It's the last of it, and this is actually the last bottle of it that I'm aware of. But then at the same time, if you never drink it, then it just goes to waste as well. So this is the perfect opportunity.
Yeah, there it is. Maybe. Here's a glass. Don't watch yourself pour it on the screen. I've made that mistake, and it's like really hard because it's like inverted. Well, again, if you're just joining, welcome. We're excited to take user questions. So please throw questions out. We have a few things we're going to talk about. Cheers. Yeah. We're drinking a barrel-aged D's Nuts, which I believe we only did once, and probably will happen again.
2014 or 15?
Yeah. What a tasty beer. It's got the nuttiness really comes through, kind of like caramely on the nose.
But the nuttiness is more like hazelnut, maybe almond, compared to what it's normally is more like a roasty, darker walnut peanut type thing.
Right. Well, and the woodiness, I think kind of that walnut, right, is kind of woody to me usually. And being barrel aged, I think this beer has that. So, wow.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah. That is nice. All right. Well, we're going to get into it. Thanks for joining. Again, this is Beers, Cheers, and Happenings. If you guys have been following us since the beginning, we started in 2012. August 17th is the actual anniversary. So we're a little bit ahead, but we're going to have fun things planned for next week online as well. Ben and I are the co-founders. So and I think I wanted to say, of course, thank you to my wife, and thank you to the staff that's been with us, supporting us. Our whole team is awesome, and I think that's what it takes to build a long-standing business. So be kind to the staff. You know, it's a unique time right now. Ben, did you have any thank yous you wanted?
Yes, I would also like to thank your wife and thank my wife, because I'm sure
I'd like to thank your wife as well.
So we're going to thank each other's wives and our own wives. Also like to thank Peter. I mean, this has been a journey that is just transformed over a long time, and I don't think we've been making it up as we go along, I think, and we've been learning, and our roles change, and I think we flip-flopped on things we've done at different points.
Yeah.
I mean, at first you were mostly the compliance and the legal and accounting, and I was the brewing, and then we swapped all that, and it just goes back and forth, but that's what's good. We're flexible and we learn.
A little bit of everything early on. I just did a interview with the Michigan Brewers Guild podcast.
Yes, this afternoon.
No, it wasn't.
It
just got posted. Got posted. And I will probably share that next. I didn't want to confuse people because we were doing this other live thing, but that was really interesting to recount and rethink about how the roles changed over time. Thanks for joining, Diane. I never know how to say your last name, D'Onofrio. I'm sure I got it wrong, but thank you for joining. And I appreciate, I've stayed at your place, hosting us, beer things, not beer things. It's great to have fans that support. I love this industry is very like grassroots, and people help each other out. So I think that's awesome. And the customers are passionate about what they're doing. Or about enjoying it as well. So
absolutely. I mean, it's the idea we had for the pub was make it a community space, and we've grown and changed a little bit over the years, but the big thing is about community, trying to be involved locally, trying to be that space where friends can meet and join, and that's what's great about it.
It looks like I got the name close too, so that's good. We got Brian Wagner. Congratulations. Love you guys. business and staff. Thanks, Brian. And come up with a good question for us. We're going to take user questions later. I also see Patrick Horan. What's up,
that is
Ben?
uncle-in-law. So cheers down to Grosse Pointe there.
Yeah. And then
Jamie Lamont. So yeah, Jamie worked with us on the school paper, actually.
Yeah. Way back. That's actually kind of how we got connected.
Yes.
You know, working and going to class at North Central. I think the paper was the first thing. Did we have a class together before the paper, or?
I think both the paper and the class started roughly the same time.
Yeah,
because it was geology with Kurt Youngling.
Yeah.
Yes. And then, of course, the paper with Carrie Thibault as our advisor, and Jamie was there with us too. So yeah.
So thanks for joining, Jamie, and those are good early roots. We can tap into that a little bit more.
Speaking of which, right?
Oh, no way, Kurt! We were just talking. That's like we met. We think in your class, your geology. Yeah, totally. So awesome to have you joining us, and thanks for the cheers. Absolutely, cheers. So usually we do a little bit of a beer in review, and I was just thinking about what's new since last year, Ben. One thing I had was statewide distribution. That's a new thing.
Yes.
We did that last fall, but since the anniversary party last year, so there's a new thing that isn't the same new thing everyone's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all over the state now, which is great news. You can find us pretty much anywhere, and quick hop for some of my Ohio friends right across the border, which is nice, and they appreciate that. So
yeah. So that's awesome. We just recently, if you've been watching, released our first non-alcohol totally unique product. So that's new for us. We're excited. Michigan Hop Water uses all locally grown hops down in the Williamsburg area.
All locally sourced water.
Yep, all locally sourced water. All our beer does that. So that's fun, and I think along those lines too, we've been hopefully everyone's been noticing. We've been putting a little more back into our R&D program and new beers and exciting things at the pub. So stay tuned. There's more and more of that coming. Just also next week I mentioned this earlier. Next week's the official anniversary on Monday, August 17th, and we plan on having online merch specials and probably some special little video releases, as well as a limited release of Forget Me Not, which we were going to do a larger release of this year, and didn't happen just with timing of everything. So we're excited to have some of that in cans at the pub. Again, that was my actually my wedding beer, but it's a hibiscus saison. So if you're looking for that, if you like that beer, I know we got a response on Instagram recently looking for that beer, and the good news is it'll be available for a little bit at least right at our pub. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming next week, so please stay tuned to our social channels. We'll be celebrating the 8 years of beards in kind of a different way this year, but hey, it's cool as well. So if you guys have questions, please throw them in the comments. I am watching the comments. Would love to answer anything that you guys have about what we're doing. Until we get a thought-provoking question I had for you, Ben. What do you think in the 8 years, aside from the pandemic, because I know you had that scheduled for year 8, but other than that, what's the biggest thing that's turned out different from how you anticipated kind of this thing going when we got it rolling?
How do I put this? I think everything changed. Everything's different than what I anticipated, but it's where I think we always kind of wanted to go. So ultimately we're getting there, but it's the direction and how we did it that's not quite exactly as imagined, because we've been flexible. But I think we always wanted to be a full service restaurant.
Yes, I think that was right there. We just knew we wanted to start out with the beer and focus on that.
I think we always wanted to be brewing for distribution. We've done that. It's just it's the details of how we got there that are quite different, I guess, than anything I could have expected. And moving forward, I don't know what to expect. I mean, I'd love to be able to get a space kind of like our original pub back going. And, I know we'd love to grow our production facility with like a beer garden type thing and expand in those regards. But right now it's just kind of focusing on the now. So,
yeah, I think, one thing, and I touched on this in the podcast I did recently with the Michigan Brewers Guild. They have it's called the Great Beer State Podcast. They're interviewing and getting the stories of a lot of this microbrew community in Michigan.
Make sure I'm facing the mug.
Yeah, exactly. But I talked to them, and for me, like something that was different was, I think we started it because we were like, there's a hole in the market in Petoskey. There's no craft brewery. We like craft beer. We were both creators. We kind of like making things. And so learning to appreciate, we were both like entrepreneurial, but learning to appreciate some of the different work you do, than what we started with the work we were doing, right? Like you learning how to become a spreadsheet czar, instead of mashing in grain. But in finding the enjoyment in that and in building the team.
Well, and I think that kind of went to, we'd asked around other breweries for advice. And I remember one key phrase Joe Short said was, if you want to brew beer, don't open a brewery, because your role is going to have to change over time. It's going to have to develop and change. And it's odd. I really do miss brewing beer, but at the same time, I also really enjoy doing what I do now.
Yeah. Make sure you get a little closer to the mic. I'm just watching our levels here.
Okay.
Sweet. We got a few more shout outs. We had some new viewers join. So need to get back to Beards. Jason,
would love to have you back.
Thanks for joining. Tyler Gillies, cheers. Doing good work out there, helping sell our beer.
Papa Bear, Rod Slocum, Papa Bear.
Man, he gave a good shout out to our staff again. We the bigger we've grown, the more important it is to have staff.
It's a whole team effort.
Yeah, when we started, I was recounting like how we weren't sure if we would have money to pay anyone, so we did it ourselves. And then like after the first day, we were like, we're gonna need to hire somebody, like, because we were like brewing the beer all day and then trying to serve at night, and we had one application that was just sitting there that we had held on to because
we called the one application.
Yeah. So humble beginnings for sure. And Brian, of course, is missing his old bar friends and trivia. So yes.
I think he was on a team with Papa Bear and Carlin Smith.
Yeah. It's awesome. The community side. So I think that's something that we always wanted at Beards. And of course, if you followed us, you may notice we don't have TVs, we try to kind of encourage social gatherings. We have larger tables. So that's always that's
extra challenging right now.
Extra challenging right now, getting people to mingle,
But overall, I think that's what we'd rather have and always would rather be, is that space where people can connect and interact and actually have a space where you meet others and talk and actually enjoy the experience, besides going off into TV land for a little while.
Yeah, so I think let's roll on that a little. Brian said, can we talk a little bit more about our vision for being a family-friendly hangout, community focus? And I think that I just felt like that's what interested me. Yeah. I mean, when we got started, it's like I guess, partly I'm not a huge sports person, so I wasn't like, I need to be the sports bar. But also we felt like there was opportunities already in the community for that. And, I had traveled, and you'd traveled, Ben, but I had come off a semester abroad in England and kind of seen pub culture. I know there's definitely TVs over there too, but there was one place called the Artichoke in Broome, I remember. And it was like this one street town. I walked through like fields, like you could over there's like trails that go, and you have a right, you can walk across anyone's property just to walk, like
wandering rights or
so I was like walking
rights to roam,
something like that. So I walked through these like farmers fields on this trail to get to the pub, and then they're just talking to the locals, right, and like hanging out. And I was like, that's what I want to bring. I want to be that place in our community. So
and I think another perspective we had is, we're both born and raised up here, and once you graduate high school, there's not a lot to do, especially in the evenings and night between, high school and 21 years old. So when we opened the first pub, the idea was everybody's welcome. When your friends start turning 21, or you start turning 21 and your friends aren't, it really limits the kind of places you could go. So we felt, especially with our open mic nights, let's just be open to everybody. It's not about selling alcohol. It's about creating a space where people were going to interact and have fun and kick back and relax. And then with the new pub, how do we become family friendly? Make sure we provide the board games, make sure we have that shuffleboard up there, and just try to provide an environment where people can go relax, because people our age now are starting to have kids and raise families, and we don't want to, I don't know how to put it. It just seems right. Be a place for everybody.
Well, that touches, I think our thing was really about being a place for the community. So first, like we never wanted to be the seasonal place that shut down and reopened in the summer. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a business plan. But for us, I think our business plan was we want it to be the community place. And so we wanted it to be first and foremost configured for things that the year-round resident would enjoy, understanding that in the summer we might not be their spot, right? A lot of them pull back a little because like, hey, there's a lot of
crazy
people. Yeah, it's crazy.
And most people like to avoid downtown.
But we figured if we did things that the locals liked, then the tourists would get on board as well.
I mean, people come to Petoskey because it's special and unique. And if we make it like any other urban sprawl, you kind of lose that character. And people come here for what makes Petoskey unique and special.
Yeah.
And that's why people live here. So that's what we're going to be.
Yeah. So community, huge part of why we started, huge part of what we're about.
And huge part of what we're continuing on. Peter's been involved with the Brewers Guild for our brewing community. Yeah. Involved with the chamber and the city for our local community. Peter's on other local boards for events and organizations. And it's, this is our home. That was a large part of why we opened the brewery here, was because it's home.
Yeah. And I think finding community, another thing is finding community connections in farther reaching to community can be like bound by, I don't think it's just geographic bound in some sense.
It could be bound by interest.
Right. Yeah.
Or mindset or anything like that. And
And so that's another thing with kind of like a focus on supporting, a hangout place where people can engage in conversations and aren't getting pulled away by TVs or feeling rushed out. That kind of lets those natural communities develop. So thanks, Brian. Great question. And if you have questions for us, please throw them in the comments. We're looking to do as much Q&A as possible, celebrating 8 years here. So if there's things you've wondered about, if there's beers, you're like, hey, is that beer ever coming back? If there's like, when are you going to can this? Like anything, please throw them in. We'll address them. Got a shout out from Karen
Jankowski, racing friend out on the West Coast. Cheers.
And we did a good episode, Karen, of our What's Your Craft show featuring a local rally racing team. If you haven't checked that out, go to our website. I think it's under the creative tab, or it might be under What's Your Craft. And you can watch. Ben is on that episode as well.
Tim and Michelle Michaels, nice local team. And this is Karen and Don Jankowski, who I've known for, almost 10, 15 years now. Time all blurs together. Must be 15 years because we've been doing the brewery for 8.
Yeah.
But they've run around the U.S. for quite some time. And Karen's a really top-notch co-driver. And
awesome.
Good folk.
Well, cheers, Karen. Tim Horan asking about our menu. When are we going to get back to the full strength? Is that dependent on the virus, government, availability of ingredients? You want to tackle that, Ben?
Yeah, so this is my father-in-law, wife's Papa Bear. We'd like to get back to the full menu at some point. We don't know what the full menu will be, if it will be the same or if we're gonna shake it up a little bit. Part of it's to do with availability of ingredients. Things got very tough for restaurants. The news was big back in March, April, May with food shortages because it disrupted the whole food supply system. It's still kind of wonky out there, so we're still having some issues. And the other side of it is just extremely short staffed this summer. Extra challenges throughout the nation and northern Michigan in particular. I think everybody's well aware that there's lots of now hiring signs. So we just tried to streamline as much as we could, focus on what we do best and what we can execute the best we can through these times. But at some point it's going to come back. I can't make promises if it's going to be a month or a year, but we'd love to get there. And, we've got a lot of ideas. We love food.
I think innovation is a part of it too. Like I would not expect us to jump back to an exact menu that we had before, right? I think for us, it's about being innovative, and so we're going to keep that trend, but quality is the other thing. And that was kind of, you alluded to it, but you didn't use that word exactly. I think for us, it was about paring it down to something that we knew we could consistently execute well, that was going to meet the quality standards of beards. And as we bring new items, we're going to find, whether it's staffing or ingredients, we're going to find things that work with the variables we have to be innovative and maintain the quality. So good question, Tim. Thanks. We got a good question here from Kirsten. When is Something Borrowed, Something Blue coming back?
I'm not sure. What do you think?
I don't know. We could do it. Typically we do these beers that are special around events such as wedding anniversaries.
Yes.
Maybe
it's going to come back.
Those. So yeah.
So yes, this is my wife, by the way. So it will come back. The question is, of course, just the flexibility of what's going on now, but we do plan to come back with it.
All right. So there you go. We got another beer question. My dark horse beer request. Thanks, Carl.
Yes.
When will grapefruit? We made it specifically hard to say for sure. Make a return.
So I would love to bring that back. That was one of Colin's recipes. We do plan to do it again. I'm not sure exactly when it's going to slot into the brew schedule at the pub. We do it on the small system, of course. But I was actually just texting Rachel the other day to try to get Colin's pickle recipe too. We'd love to bring some of those back as well. Just absolutely fantastic beers there.
Yeah, Colin did fermented pickles, and that always went over hit and miss with customers, but they were awesome. It's just not what people are expecting.
It's not what they expect. I did find
because it's not a vinegar based.
So we're close enough, of course, to Canada that we get a lot of day trippers over. Canadians seem to hands down absolutely love them. Okay. And that could just be regional taste, what they get up there. Locals, Americans, it seemed to be about 60-40. They either 60% absolutely loved them, and the other 40%, not quite their thing because it's not what they're used to.
Yeah.
But I loved those. I love
those. So stay tuned, Carl. I think we're doing a double down, and for a new and exciting. I'm going to say we're looking hard at investment, even in this tough time, in our pub system, so that we can continue doubling down on R&D and more availability of those unique beers and things. So that is hopefully a this year project. And so this is kind of an announcement of that. I mean, we do brew at the pub now, but we're looking to do more of that with a little bit more robust system. And we got a couple questions here real quick. Just a shout out from Fred Biltman. Fred, thanks for watching.
Cheers.
We talked with Fred on our live show a few weeks ago. And
author of The Rising Tide.
Yeah. And, one of the, I believe, founders or instrumental at the beginning there of New Holland Brewing. And that, pioneers in the industry for us. So awesome to have you watching. And he says his inaugural visit is imminent.
Perfect.
Please let me know, Fred. I'd love to have a beer with you. This is a good question. What was your first beer you remember having, and what is your favorite go-to classic grandpa beer to enjoy now and again?
That's actually a great question. I remember two first beers, I guess is the way I'd word it. I remember being in 4-H out at the center's house. We were doing, our weekly 4-H meeting or monthly 4-H meeting, whatever it was. And I saw my dad have a beer, which is extremely rare. And I remember I snuck
was extremely rare.
Yeah, he enjoys a good
now a regular. Yeah.
He had a Coors Light, and I remember taking a sip, and I must have been like 6 or 7. And it was not my thing. But then I do remember I was up in Marquette back in must have been about 2004. So I was out of high school a couple of years, up there just hanging out for the weekend, and we went to the old Stierenstein, which is closed now, and massive blizzard blowing through, and we were joking around with some state troopers who happened to be hanging out, and they asked if I wanted a beer, and I said, well, I'm not 21. And they said, son, if a cop asks you for a beer, you don't tell him your age. So I ordered a Killian's, and I remember that being my first beer that I sat there and enjoyed.
Yeah.
But yeah. Not to throw any troopers under the bus, but
go to classic grandpa beer. I'm not 100%. I think that probably means like old school, right?
Old school.
For me, that's probably like a Pabst or I don't know, that for like the bigger brands, the lagers. That's what I like. I think my first beer probably was I'm sure this wasn't the first sip of beer I had, but the first impactful beer was Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, really. I mean, because I was always interested in baking and coffee as I was going through like high school. For whatever reason, I liked how things were made, the craft process of how things were made. And that's when I learned that there was like beer that was something unique and like craft, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't like, that's what kind of like sparked my interest in beer in general. You know, that there was something different going on in that category.
For me, for grandpa beer, I guess I can answer that two ways. If it's grandpa beer, as in just really old school plain, I think I'd also have to say Pabst Blue Ribbon. But if it's grandpa beer, as in something I just remember always being around, Bell's Oberon. And I'm not saying that they're super old, but I think they were formed, 1986?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's fair.
And I was born in 84. So, I just remember always being around. And I remember that being the prototypical Michigan craft beer. And that's what turned me from bad beers, I'd say, into actually starting to enjoy, oh wow, beer can have flavor and be special and be unique and be different. And I don't mean Grandpa's and Larry Bell being old or anything. I mean, they make absolutely fantastic beers.
But it was there.
It's around. It was there when I was a kid, and it was there. I remember seeing it at stores and as I grew up.
So that's kind of a unique perspective, though, because we kind of grew up. Craft beer wasn't the explosion yet when we were young, but we grew up in it. We didn't grow up in an era without craft beer, right? It was always there, even as a small thing. Yeah. And so that's, maybe our generation that's a unique thing. I mean, the next kind of generations, it not only will it have been there, but been prevalent everywhere, right? So it's all of a sudden, it's not a new concept even.
And for us, it wasn't, when you word it like that, it wasn't like a craft brewery on every corner or in every town. It was like, in my mind, there was a craft brewery in Michigan, and it was Bell's. And there was a craft brewery on the West Coast, and that was Sierra Nevada. And there was a craft brewery on the East Coast, and that was Sam Adams. So it was just, they were there, and that's they make great beer.
Yeah, great question. That is a good thing to think about, where we've been. So, I mean, maybe along those lines a little. And again, if you're just joining, please throw your questions in the comments. If you are watching on a link that someone shared, make sure you throw your question in the actual Beards post about it, because not all the shared link questions come through for me. So, but we'd love to hear what you have to say and comment on it, and answer any questions you have. I think that great answer, youngsters. That's a good one. I was gonna say, so thinking back, we just thought back a little, but like, what about future? And we're celebrating 8 years here, and I was thinking as a question. I mean, predicting the future, right? This is just like a joke. Now, we're not saying this is what it's going to be, but we're saying, like, what are things we'd like or like to be talking about that we'd accomplished by year 16? I was thinking, let's just double it and say another 8 years. What are things? So do you want to take that lead?
That's a tough one, because I've got all sorts of visions for the future. I would love to have, I think, two ultimate things. One would be a move our production facility to somewhere that's got a great space for outside service, so we can have a phenomenal beer garden and do it our way, but not the same way as the pub in Petoskey, because I think we want to make sure that there's unique experiences. I'd love to have wood-fired grilled items and smoked, and make it just kind of like the best outside barbecue you're ever going to be at, with just great outside seating and dining. And we constantly get requests for event space, so I'd like to have a spot there where people could have a wedding or a wedding rehearsal, or a group dinner or something. But I'd love for it to be outside, because that's kind of what makes Northern Michigan special. The seasonality up here means every season's special. And when I want it outside, I don't mean it's just going to be for the summers only. I mean, I'd love to do snowshoe hiking and have igloos and pop-ups and all sorts of different things in the winter just to make it a unique, cool experience. And then for downtown, I would love to expand the pub a bit more so that we actually had space for a dedicated Beards market. And a Beards market would be, we've been selling our soft goods, the t-shirts and stuff, but I'd love to be able to make unique items for like a grab and go deli. So you can just pop in and grab, some really cool stuff there. But I'd also honestly love to have a butcher shop so we can just get in sides of animals and make our meats from scratch, but also have a quality butcher shop. Or I don't know, it's like an ADD thought, but I see what Zingerman's has pulled off. There's some other folks that have really staked their claim and name and just in quality, not necessarily in one product, but in experience. And I think that's what I'd love to ultimately do.
Well, I think it's important that goes back to the creativity. I would agree with you. I think there's something we lost a little along the way was casual, right? When we learned going to our new bigger space that there was to manage that type of tight space in the core district that's like super packed. We had to bring a little more formality to it. I mean, we ended up going full service dining because that's just how you give customers the least frustration. But I think we lost some of the really casual aspect of the original pub that was just like walk in, grab a beer. And I think for both of us, it's important that we bring that back in. And we have unique ways. Those aren't just pipe dreams. We have some unique ways and ideas that we're going to be doing that in the coming years. So,
I mean, it might sound crazy, but ideally I wouldn't even like to advertise that. It would just be a spot that people knew where to go because it becomes that casual, hey, this secret, like just place to go hang out. And then
the speakeasy kind of feel we had at the beginning.
I mean, we were hidden. It was that unique space where you knew we were there because you had heard about us or you had gone there, but it wasn't, there's something unique and special about that, I think.
So, and I love what we're doing. I'm really proud of our team. And so that's in no way saying what we're doing is not great. I think what we're providing now is great. I think our ideas of what we want to provide as a total experience and options are even bigger. And so I would be disappointed in 16 years, or not in 16, but at year 16, if we were just incrementally growing off what we did. I think what we're at today. Like I would like to continue to see like leaps and bounds innovations.
I think the easiest way to put it is I definitely have ADD. I was on Ritalin for a long time. I've got a lot of ideas on things I would love to be able to do. And I could go on for a couple hours with all of the ways I would lay out new parts and plans and how I would tie them in together. And Peter's very, very focused on the future. You're very analytical, but you're also very creative and you've got a bunch of ideas. And if we had the resources right now, the time, the people, the funding, I think we could just go hog wild, but that's kind of nice to be able to take the steps and do it properly, I think.
So. And I think some of what we've done, and this is a part that like we've just been dipping our toe in a little bit more. I mean, we've always had a lot of media presence, I would say, for our size, but we just started our What's Your Craft show, which I talked about earlier. And that's born out of like an excitement, like you talked about, like a meat market and doing different things. I mean, we're passionate about like craft in different venues. Stuff. Making stuff.
Somebody who's passionate about creating something.
And I don't think we have to do it all ourselves either. I mean, part of what we want to do, because we love that stuff and we don't have resources to do it all ourselves, we said, how can we use our voice, which we we're a bigger thing. We have more followers. We have more opportunity to share with the world than some newer craft. I mean, when you're crafting, you're getting started, it's hard to get the word out, right? And so how can we use that, our existing position to accelerate others' growth and promote what others are doing that we find cool and within that. So I think with the What's Your Craft show, please follow our podcast. We haven't done a lot of recent episodes because of everything going on, but we plan to keep doubling down on that and sharing the word of what others are doing. I don't think craft, it's just craft as in beer. Like we're excited about the fact that there's a whole movement going back to making things, Here's a new question. If you were a beer, what kind would you be and what would the name be? Wow, there's so much in there.
There's so much that could be. It could be a long, but I think it's actually going to be a very quick answer for me. Serendipity Porter, plain and simple. That was so. The way that beer was created was we had the brew system we bought. Our first commercial system went 1 barrel, so seemed huge back then, going from 5-gallon batches to 31. But it's so piddly and small, and we're still using it at the brewery. But we didn't know how much beer it could produce at once, so I came up with the idea for a porter recipe. I figured out what all the specialty malts were, and I put those into the mash tun, and then I cut open a bag of base 2-row, and I poured it in until nothing else would fit. And then I measured what was left in the bag and subtracted that from the recipe, and that was the basis of the recipe.
Yeah.
And it came out pretty good. It came out really good. So it was serendipitous that it worked out. So we called it Serendipity Porter.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's like one of my ideal beers. It's chocolatey and roasty. It's smooth. It's not overly heavy by any means for a porter. And then we've played with it too. We've added some special stuff into it over the years. We've barrel aged it a couple different ways, both with bourbon barrels and rye barrels. And, I think that's where it would be.
Did you see the Serendipity Porter tuba song that we shared? Mm-hmm. We had a fan who wrote a tuba song that was like, here's how I feel, how I feel that this beer is in a musical form. It was glorious. We shared it on our page, and I'm totally blanking on his name. I apologize. He plays at our open mics. Huge shout out to him for submitting that. And maybe I'll tag it back in this link to it here so you guys can find that. A lot of fun.
So what would be your what would you be as a beer?
What would I be as a beer? Boy, that's something unique I'd never thought of. I think I'd, typically we make, maybe some sort of beer that ages well, or is aged. And I say that because so something maybe barrel aged something, but maybe also something that's barrel aged less traditional, like Luna barrel aged in a gin barrel. We did that.
That's quite good.
Right?
That's very good.
And the reason I say that is because it's for me, I have trouble doing the same thing over again. So I like things that are kind of wildly different, experimental. But I still like to focus, like in Luna, gin barrel aged Luna, like it's the core beer ingredients. I still have like a tradition to it, right? Like and to myself. And my one cousin always joked that I was an old soul. So I think barrel aged is good for me. So maybe barrel aged Luna. That is the beer I would be.
I should have brought that tonight. I do have one in my fridge.
Yeah.
And I think it's the last one that I'm aware of.
It's probably the last one out there. There may be some fans who have one out there. And if you just joined us, this is our 8th year sort of celebration. Ben and I, co-founders of Beards. Please, we were just answering this question here. If we were a beer, what kind of beer would it be and what would it be named? If you have questions, please throw them in the comments. We'll probably be going for another 10 minutes or so, kind of just spitballing. So we'd love to answer your question. Talk about your topic, whatever it is, let us know. I always joke that if we don't have an answer, we'll make one up. So what are you gonna do? That's what we got. So while we're waiting to see what the next exciting question is, where would be your ultimate beer vacation? This came from my wife, by the way. She put
that's actually a great question.
Yeah.
So my wife and I actually did Ireland for our honeymoon, and we had a great time over there. I would actually go relatively close. I think I'd jump over to a month-long trip around Wales, England, and Scotland, and probably hang out in the more rural areas, get to know some folks. I would love to be able to bed down in a community for at minimum 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Spend a little bit of time traveling, but bed down in a community to the point where you start developing like some habits of always going to that special coffee shop, or, and then hit some, it would be a beer vacation, but I'd also like to try some of the scotches and the whiskeys and figure out how can we tie that into beer. Cause I love those. Oh my God. I love scotches and Irish whiskeys, and figuring out how to get some of those qualities into beer, or how to blend them with some aging, that would be amazing.
Yeah. I think that area. So I had done a study abroad semester that was kind of traveling in England, Ireland, and Scotland, and I loved that kind of nature of it, where we could spend a little more time in a community. I had referenced the Artichoke pub, in a small community. But that's a great one, because I think from an American perspective, I came to England and I was like, man, these beers are totally different. They're all the same. But that's not, but as I started drinking more of it, it's like a totally different style. But then you start like learning kind of the differences, right, in it, right? They tasted all the same because they had a unique common core that was so different from what I expected. I just kind of mentally was like categorizing them as, okay, that's another one of these or another one of these. I mean, there was a few different styles, but I think the yeasts are very different. The malts are very different over there. The hops being used are different. I appreciate that. And this has been some years since I've been there, but I appreciate that it's not just copying what America is doing, but it's kind of like taking their traditional things and experimenting. So I think there's a lot of cool stuff there. I would probably, I don't know. I've been big into Asia lately, Japan in particular. I've done some beer vacations, in Europe more. So I don't know. I'd love to see what's going on a little bit more in the Asian beer scene, because I think they're bringing new flavors, unique flavors. Yeah. So I'd love to do Korea. Love to tour around Japan a little bit more, get in the countryside, try some of the smaller breweries. I think a lot of the culture there has come from America, as far as it's like Americans going over and getting something going. But then there's like unique local twists on it, and locals taking it and making their own. So I'd love to see how that's kind of expanded and gone. Great question. Where do you guys currently distribute, and where do you see your next expansions?
You're more on the production side than I am, so you
got... So currently, and this is big, I touched on this just briefly early on, we are now distributing statewide, so all of Michigan. That's pretty exciting. We just started that last fall and kind of rounded out. Southeast Michigan was our last territory, and that's the biggest area. So please support us down there. If you see the beers, buy them up. We're trying to get in more stores. Ask your local store for it. We've talked a lot about expanding within the Great Lakes region, but other than that, our major expansion goals are actually overseas, looking a little bit. We talked about Japan, and that falls back to our community aspect. The reason we're interested in distributing to Japan is because we have a sister state relationship with a prefecture over there called Shiga. A couple of years ago was the 50th anniversary of that. Petoskey actually has a sister city in Takashima. Yeah, which is
was Makino.
Yeah.
Then it became Takashima.
And you visit it.
Yeah, so I participated in that program in high school. So it was 1998 was my first time ever traveling without family, first time ever flying, first time going overseas. And I went to Japan for the Sister City Exchange program. And we stayed in Biwa, the north end of Lake Biwa in Makino, which is now part of Takashima. And it was an absolutely amazing experience. And it really opened my eyes to the world being a different place than just Petoskey. And since then, we got the opportunity to go back almost 2 years ago now, year and a half ago, and went to Tokyo, which I'm not a big city person by any means. I mean, to me, anything like Grand Rapids size is huge. I absolutely love Tokyo. I mean, it was so absolutely amazing. It's such a food city. It was, I think, 300,000 restaurants. I go back in a heartbeat and just spend time wandering around. But yeah, it was there's something there where I think they also very, very much appreciate craft.
Yeah. So expansion overseas, that's an exciting thing for us. But within a community where we have some connection, and that's something I hope that we can do more of in the future, and also support, like the Sister City program has not sent high schoolers over since you went, right?
I think we were the first class to go over.
Yeah.
And it was every other year they would send a group of students over here, and then we would send a group over there on alternating years. Our group went, 2 years later, another group went, and that was the end of that program, which is unfortunate. It was very tough to send students over because of the time changes and the differences. So it just unfortunately didn't work out long term.
But I think it was impactful, and I think it's a valuable thing to look back on and say, is there a way we can bring that into the future? And maybe as a community player, maybe that's our role, is to be part of that. So Here we got one more question from Brian. I love your year-round, non-seasonal goals and taking care of locals. I believe every Petoskey business should make that a goal. What can you share with the local businesses?
I mean, I think it simply comes down to so many towns when you travel to them. For me, the first mile or so when you drive in, they're the same. There's a Walmart, a Home Depot, and some big box stores and chain restaurants. But when you get into the core of what makes a town special and unique, there's something there, and there's a kernel that makes people want to live there. And the more you can make a town approachable and acceptable, and not just secondarily for the locals, but primarily for the locals, the more people are going to want to go there. And the more you can create a thriving year-round community, and you can get those people that are wanting to travel there as well, because we have to keep in mind Petoskey's not just a tourist town, we're also a resort community, which is a little bit of a different mindset, and a year-round community.
Yeah, I think that's important, is to take care of your locals. And I think I would share that if you're a box store, you can still do that.
Yeah, oh,
right.
absolutely.
And so I think that's where there's sometimes a different mindset. Like some chains or box stores take more of you're working with inside your franchise or however that works, but they take a community mindset, and we're going to engage with our community, or they don't, right? And they're like, we're just here to make a buck. And I think customers notice that, right?
Absolutely.
Because there's more to a brand than just the international side of it. The locals will pick up on if this business is there for us or not. So I would encourage any business owner, whether I don't think there's anything wrong with being part of a franchise or a larger corporation in your kind of entrepreneurial spirit, but figure out how to do something that makes you stand out in the community, gives back to the community, supports the community.
Yeah. And I think even just beyond businesses, just to everybody, get involved.
Yeah.
Because if cities are always looking for public input, they're always looking for help on boards and committees, and that's a great way to kind of steer the town in the direction that you would love it to go. That way you can be actively participating in what will make your community stronger.
Yep. All right. Well, we planned poorly here and ran out of beer. So I think it might be time for us to wrap. I really appreciate the engagement from everyone. Again, Ben and I are thrilled to be part of this Petoskey community. 8 years of beer is just starting here with this kickoff live stream. Next week, we'll be sharing some special online merch, sales discounts. There might be some cool items that you're not familiar with available. There will also be probably some little videos that we'll be sharing and stuff. So we're going to be doing some cool stuff, even though the year is unique and we won't all be gathering at the pub in mass and mingling like we would like to be. So please stick around, stay tuned, and I just have a few little drips, but cheers, everyone. Thanks, the Beards team.
Cheers.